We are back with another episode of Art Now Entertainment, and I'm going to talk about a comic that I actually wanted to talk about a while back, but I just didn't get to it. It's another DC Milestone collaboration, and that is Hardware Season 1, Episode 5. And this one, you know what? I really like to compare Hardware to, for me, it's an obvious comparison, but I want to compare him to Iron Man of Marvel because you know this whole issue, this whole story, it reminds me of the first Iron Man, and Curtis Metcalf, aka Hardware, is dealing with his own adversary, just like Tony Stark was in Iron Man 1. In Iron Man 1, Tony Stark's his main nemesis is his boss. You know, the guy who's been given the keys to his father's business. Um, Stark Industries, which in that guy's name is Obadiah Stane. And in Hardware, the comic, his Hardware's enemy, his Obadiah Stane, is Edwin Alva. And Edwin Alva is basically, he's in charge of Alva Industries, the same industry that threw chemical agents at protesters, and which is the biggest event in the milestone the milestone universe, because these canisters that basically are thrown out into the crowd, it affects all these protesters. Virgil Hawkins, aka Static Shock, he's one of the bigger names that has been affected with this chemical agent, and it turns a lot of these protesters into Big Bang babies. And also, I want to say that's what all these guys are a product of, being Big Bang babies, because they have all these powers that seemingly come out of nowhere. So it has to be the chemical that dropped. And this is also Blood Syndicate Season 1, Episode 1. That's pretty good. I just read that. But like I said, I've been meaning to read this one, and review it. But Edwin Alva has been on Hardware's butt, man, like this whole time, and he's trying to. It's basically like, I swear it feels like the first Iron Man to me. I mean, it starts off with there's differences obviously, but this issue starts off with Curtis seeing that his father's leaving the household, and seemingly after that, it seems like his life kind of goes downhill as far as financially, because he doesn't have a two-parent household, and he's a brilliant young kid, which they don't, which they touch on, but you kind of got to piece it together, because Edwin Alva saw the genius in him, and then he brings him along. He sees that this kid. Story goes, Curtis Metcalf is building a lot of different new inventions at talent shows, and Edwin Alva basically is, he's one of the big guys, of the city of Dakota. He's like a billionaire, I believe. And so he sees Curtis Metcalf at this talent show. He's killing it. Curtis is brilliant, and he takes him under his wing. He works for Alva Industries. He's making all types of things under the umbrella of Edwin Alva. And then, eventually, he blames Edwin Alva, goes on this big smear campaign years down the line, and says that Curtis Metcalf was responsible for the canisters being thrown and the Big Bang babies, coming to be. And so, one of the things, a multitude of things reminds me of Iron Man. You know how Tony Stark has Jarvis always in his headpiece and he's talking to him. So Curtis, he has his own Jarvis, and his own Jarvis is his father. Well, the voice of his father, his robot, the robot that he has in his head that helps him out in crazy situations, is the voice of his father. And so he calls his instead of calling his machine Jarvis, he calls his machine POPs, like Pops, which I thought was pretty cool. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of touching, because as it starts, like I said, you actually see his father walking out, and it's a touching moment. I'm like, oh man, that's sad, So this whole thing is, it's crazy. And then, Edwin Alva has so much power, and he's such a shadowy figure that even when you think Hardware is on top, and he's, you know, seemingly going to bring Edwin Alva to his knees and to justice. It just doesn't go his way. In this story, everyone's afraid of him. Edwin Alva is kind of like, he also kind of reminds me of Kingpin, you know, because he's the shadowy figure that has so much power that people dare not even, you know, stand up to him. And people try to appease him so they don't get hurt. One scenario, this guy that used to work for Edwin Alva was a prodigy, just like Curtis Metcalf was. And, you know, the guy who, you know, he ends up trying to set up Curtis Metcalf to appease Edwin Alva so he can kind of escape with his life and his, you know, career intact and his livelihood intact. And then he, in the midst of trying to set up Curtis, they both end up in a trap that Edwin Alva, excuse me, I can't talk, that Edwin Alva sets up for them, basically trying to kill both of them. This building collapses on them, and, you know, Curtis being the hero that he is, he manages to get them out of it. And then, you know, look, it's crazy. The building's about to fall on this dude. Look, and Curtis Metcalf is about to save the very guy who set him up. So it's just like, you know, he's still a hero, even with people that are trying to backstab. So it's crazy. And then eventually, you know, the guy has a change of heart, and he's like, all right, Curtis, you know, after I get out, if we make it out of this, I'll tell you everything that I should have told you, and I'll tell you all the secrets to stop Edwin Alva that no one knows but me, because he's, you know, he was an ex-prodigy of Edwin Alva. And, yeah, man, it's pretty cool. I mean, it even goes as far, and this is why I said the Obadiah Stane thing, you know, as far as the comparison. Edwin Alva is like, you know, all that equipment, all that tech that Curtis Metcalf made, it doesn't belong to him. I'm the one that gave him basically the infrastructure to make these type of tools, and it's all me. You know, even though he came up with the invention, it's still my property because he made it under my roof, basically. And so, you know, he's a very shrewd businessman. Very shrewd businessman. It's a pretty cool concept. He's actually talking, yeah, he has a whole conversation with one of Curtis's allies, and it is pretty cool, man. Like, I like the whole shadowy figure type of thing, man, because he's like this. Edwin Alva is not an imposing figure, you know, physically, but he just has that face, and he's just like, you know, like he's the string puller, the puppet master, if you will. And so, and then he hires this guy that's on the front of this cover who I don't know that X-Men that was able to multiply himself, but this guy basically is able to do that. And at the end of this comic, I should say spoiler alert, at the end of this, this guy appears and he tells Curtis Metcalf, he's like, hey man, I'm here to take you out. Edwin Alva hired me. These checks cleared. That's what he tells him. He says the check's cleared. And Curtis, before he says that, Curtis is like, this doesn't concern you. And then he was like, well, Edwin Alva's check's cleared, so it does concern me. And then he does whatever, and then he multiplies into multiple, you know, multiple whatever he is. And then Curtis is just like, he said, and then the guy was like, you gotta fight me, all of me. And Curtis is like, bet, you know, bring it on. So it's pretty cool. I try to streamline this story, but yeah, man, it's pretty cool, man. And then you got Blood Syndicate too, as well. You know what I'm saying? Down there, you got the artwork. So Blood Syndicate, I'm looking forward to learning a little bit more about that story as we proceed. But I mean, dude, man, I don't even know if Edwin Alva is gonna just lose by the end of this. I think he's just meant to be the big baddie. And obviously, I would know that if I knew more about the Milestone universe, but that's why I'm reading these comics. That's why I got these comics coming right now, because I'm really excited about what they're bringing to the table right now. I'm always looking for new comics with a fresh look, a fresh feel, and different stories, you know. And this one is awesome, man. You know, like I said, also Blood Syndicate. You know, it's really cool that all this stuff is happening in Dakota City at the same time. So, you know, it's just a crazy thing. All these stories are just sprawling out. But yeah, man. I think I should be getting. I think episode 6 should be coming out next month. And I read this twice just so I knew exactly what the hell I was going to talk about and how I was going to talk about it. But yeah, man, this has got to be obviously one of Hardware's baddies in his catalog. I just don't know. I mean, I don't know if he has obviously he has superpowers because he's able to replicate himself. But I wonder if that's all there is to him as far as like his abilities. He knows how to replicate himself. I don't know. Hardware is gonna have his hands full with this guy, so we'll see. But this is another episode of Art in Our Entertainment, and I'll talk to you guys soon. I got more comics, I got more stories on the way, a lot of stuff that interests me that I'm just now rolling out, you know what I'm saying? So you gotta stay tuned, man. This is the realm of Art and Our Entertainment. Y'all see it, man. Y'all see what we on, man.